Morning, gentlemen.
Morning, Barry.
Morning, Barry.
Morning. You first, Josh Frydenberg. We'll get to the Abbott factor shortly, but what just happened?
Well, firstly, I'd like to say that we're very hopeful that we'll be able to govern in our own right, and we're not hearing about Labor doing it.
You seriously believe that?
We're very hopeful.
You've been saying that for 8 weeks.
Well, we're very hopeful. As you said, there are 8 seats that are still in the balance, and the majority look like they're going towards us. And when you consider
on what basis?
Well, based on the fact that postal votes, and there's 1.5 million, Barry, that have yet to be counted, have historically gone very strongly towards us. In fact, they went by a margin of more than 5% at the last election. But as to what happened here, I think, firstly, there is a swing to first-term governments. You saw that in '84, you saw that in '98 when John Howard had a 4.6% swing against him. And you saw that in 2010. Secondly, I think the Mediscare campaign, despite being undermined by the AMA themselves, did bite, and particularly in a state like Tasmania. And I think thirdly, we are seeing Australia join the international trend towards populist politics. And we've seen that with Xenophon, we've seen that with Hanson, and of course with the Labor Party making all these promises that we know they can't fund and can't deliver.
Brendan O'Connor, do you agree that Bill Shorten is as well placed as Malcolm Turnbull to form a government, or is that something you refuse to accept at this point?
Well, on the number of seats, Barry, you'd have to say that's the case. I mean, the fact is, however, there's no clear winner, there's only a clear loser, and that's Malcolm Turnbull. I mean, Malcolm Turnbull was put into the position to collect votes for the Liberal Party. He's not well loved within the Liberal Party. He failed at the one task he was supposed to deliver upon, and I think that's also as a result of the instability and the division within the Liberal Party. By way of comparison, Labor has been united, coherent, led on policy, and Bill Shorten out-campaigned Malcolm Turnbull.
I'll give you another loser, the country, more instability.
Well, that's why we need to make sure we resolve this in a very temperate manner, and that's why I was a bit surprised, I have to say, at the manner in which Malcolm Turnbull spoke last night. I thought that was not prime ministerial. I thought it was shrill. I thought he blamed everybody else but himself, and I think he called an election too early.
If it was to be, if you fall short, Josh Frydenberg, and you need a couple, Bob Katter, but certainly not Bant or Wilkie, where do you go? That leaves Rebecca Sharkey from the Xenophon. Maybe there could be two Xenophons, and Cathy McGowan. Where do you go?
Well, I just don't think I should be playing into hypotheticals here, Barry, because there are still so many votes to be counted. I mean, in Victoria, my state, it was school holidays and so many people were away. So we saw in my seat more than a doubling of the pre-poll and the postal votes, and that's been repeated across the country. And we know that the Labor Party's record of sending out postal vote applications is very patchy, and I think that will strongly play into our favour.
What about you, Brendan O'Connor? Do you see any make-up there, any scenario that could lead to 76 seats for Labor?
Look, as it stands, Barry, anything's possible. This matter was unresolved last night. It's still unresolved. We've got counting that occurs on Tuesday. I think certainly Labor's there in a position to talk to independents and others. But at this point, I have to say, this has been a remarkable result for Labor. We were written off. You think about 3 years ago, we were divided, bereft of perhaps some direction, and under the leadership of Bill Shorten, we've united, we've led on policy, the government's followed, and I think our campaign was strong.
Would it be good enough, though, for either party to simply get a guarantee on supply and then govern without any formal arrangement? Would that be good enough?
Well, I think, of course, we need to maintain stability, and for the country's sake, we need to ensure that whatever happens from this point on, Barry, that we project that stability so people feel that we're considering the national interest. And I think that's what you'll see from Bill Shorten and Labor. But there are so many imponderables at the moment. We need to deal with those. But we'll do so in a methodical, temperate manner. We're very happy with the result, given the circumstances of the loss 3 years ago. But I think we need to deal with this now in a very focused and temperate way in order not to cause any anxiety.
One thing is certain, that the coalition would not have the numbers in a joint sitting. Did you blow that strategy, the double dissolution strategy?
Well, as you know, we called a double dissolution election because we thought that the ABCC and the Registered Organisations Bill were critical to Australia's future economic prosperity, and they'd been blocked by the Labor Party and others in the Senate. Now, this issue was discussed during the campaign. It was part of our formal advertising program.
But you haven't got the numbers now. How do you feel about that? Is that a matter of embarrassment for the party?
No, because we thought that issue was important enough to call a double dissolution election, but you're right, the numbers are not there to be passed, to pass
and
those
isn't
bills.
That a hit to Malcolm Turnbull's credibility?
Well, he put his best foot forward, and obviously that we're not going to get the numbers in the double dissolution, but those issues are still very important for
And there are
Australia.
some in the Liberal Party already putting me on notice over the superannuation issue. That was not put to the party room. There was no consultation.
Look, there'll be a time for a post-mortem here, and I'm sure everyone will ask some serious questions.
And that's one question they'll ask, won't they? There was no consultation.
But they're not going to do it when there's 1.5 million postal votes still to be counted, and it's still very unclear as to how a government will be formed, and we're still very hopeful that it'll be us.
Did Scott Morrison and Kelly O'Dwyer sell that issue?
Look, I think everybody in the coalition had a responsibility to sell that issue, and
But
that was
they
one of
didn't.
many. Well, no, that's not right. I think they did sell it.
But Barry, on the double dissolution, I mean, this has been a disaster for Malcolm Turnbull. He went to the election, called an election early. You might remember he prorogued the Parliament, or in fact he managed to convince the Governor-General to do so. Based on this double dissolution, he mentioned the ABCC 4 times in 56 days. He spoke more about it last night after the election than he did during the election campaign. It was a phony war. The people of Australia were concerned about healthcare and jobs and education, and he completely got it wrong.
Well, can I just say, on healthcare, it was a completely dishonest, misleading campaign, and as the Prime Minister said last night, the Labor Party's been ringing up elderly people, making them think that we were going to privatise Medicare when nothing of the sort was being contemplated or would happen. And I think, obviously, that's had an impact, and there will be plenty of discussion about that in future days.
Well, Josh, I mean, we're not going to be lectured to on campaigns. I mean, we're talking about a political party that talked about $100 lamb roasts, talked about wiping Whyalla off the map.
So you're saying you gave them as good as you got?
No. The difference between those assertions and this was Medicare was being stripped away piece by piece, brick by brick, $2 billion worth of cuts in the budget, and the fact is the Liberals didn't understand that that was a great concern to the Australian people.
Josh Frydenberg, would Tony Abbott have won an election if he was the leader?
I think, as Scott Morrison put it well last night, which is he's not going to get into that hypothetical because we'll never know. But clearly when Tony was the leader, we were behind in the polls. Now, we went up in the polls significantly earlier this year. Election wasn't called, and now we've had an election later in the year. But I think, you know, Malcolm Turnbull still remains a popular figure for the broad number of Australian people.
Malcolm Turnbull said that if Tony Abbott had been the leader, the coalition would have suffered a resounding loss. Do you accept that?
Well, look, you know, everyone will have their own view. Malcolm Turnbull is the leader. The party room made that decision. I think he's campaigned very strongly, and I still am very hopeful that we will form government in our own right.
Will he be the leader at the end of the year?
I'm very confident he will be.
Well, Bill Shorten certainly will be. We're just not sure whether we'll be in government or not. But I think it's fair to say that because we led, I think we didn't do the small target theory that's the orthodox in politics. We announced policies well out from the election. We were united, we were stable. By way of comparison, the Liberal Party got rid of their leader, were divided, and I think you're going to see some very significant internal division within the Liberal Party as a result of last night.
Hang on, Tanya Plibersek was just hedging her bets there, Brendan, as to who would be the leader in the Labor Party. I think you've got Albanese, Bowe and Plibersek, they're all lining up for their shot.
Just finally, Malcolm Turnbull did say throughout the campaign, we will win, we will win. He was saying it again last night. Journalists were clearly briefed during the campaign by the coalition that the coalition would win. Are we seeing here with gullible journalists, or is it the coalition that can't read the numbers?
Well, the polls always told us it was going to be a very close election, and that is the case. I think we didn't see the results coming in Tasmania the way they did, but there's been huge volatility in that state when you consider a seat like Bass has changed 6 times since 1993 and Braddon 5 times since 1983. I don't think we saw what was going to happen in Tasmania.
In the light of that, though, why do you think the coalition was briefing in that way?
Well, my view is that they're a divided party, that if the idea that they were going to lose the election became, or have a chance of even losing the election, became apparent during the course of the campaign, they would have unravelled, because they're a dysfunctional and divided party.
Thank you both for your time this morning.
Thanks, Barry.
Thanks, Barry.